Civilization or Barbarism, an Authentic Anthropology by Dr. Cheikh Anta. Godelaire continues his analysis. The productive use of slaves cannot become the dominant relation of production, but a genuine development of productive slavery assumes the private ownership of the land within the rural communities, and this, in Europe, was accomplished through the what Marx calls the antique mode of production. This was the case with Rome, as Godelaire shows, where revolution was not made for the purpose of the analysis was to show the revolutionary virtues of a slave system. This is true in itself, but all depends on territorial context, as we have said so often. But what is most serious is that the most important phase of the analysis is summarized in one neutral phase. The slave mode of production evolves and decomposes in a long agony, where its place is taken by the Germanic forms of ownership, one of the bases of feudal mode of production. It should be remembered that this agony of the slave system lasted for 500 years, and that its disappearance in 476 AD was due quite by chance to a quasi mechanical external cause, the barbarian invasions, so much so that the oriental half of the Roman Empire spared from these invasions after negotiation continued for another 1,000 years until the conquest of Constantinople by Muhammad II, the conqueror, in 1453. Between 476, the end of the Roman Empire, and the year 800, the time of the coronation of Charlemagne and the Carolingian Renaissance, there was a veritable regression in all fields of knowledge. Even the architectural techniques of antiquity were lost. New scientific progress was to come from Arab contributions and from the role played by the Catholic Church, which, during the whole period of the High Middle Ages, contained the historic memory of the West, thus making any cumulative process possible. With the English monk Al- Alcuin, cultural and technical advisor to Charlemagne, knowledge began to come out of the monasteries after an eclipse of 500 years. The cumulative process that developed with the landowning nobility and the villages of the 11th century would not have been conceivable without the special role of the church. It is thus important to emphasize this when describing this singularity of the Western evolutionary path. Therefore, this evolution was not due to racial factors, as Marx himself tended to believe. The Greeks were normal children, while many of the ancient nations belonged to the category of ill bred or old looking children. If it were otherwise, the Persians, the Medes, the Aryans of India, etc., should have followed the same evolutionary path as the Greeks of the same race. However, nothing of the sort happened. Consequently, as a good Marxist, one must purify sociological theory of tendencies to racial hierarchization, tendencies that are sometimes implicit among the best disciples or even in Marx himself. Given the aim of the sociology to find the objective historical factors responsible for this Western evolution, it is not scientific to omit the role played by the church in the formation of the Western socio political structures. The taking into considerations of the numerous common points between the AMP and the modern state, which we have indicated throughout this account, must have led uh, with Fogel, an adversary of Marxism, to affirm that the structure of the AMP state is the proof that a bureaucratic class having despotic power could edify itself based on the socialist collective forms of ownership. Godelier rightly criticizes and rejects this idea. In another connection, he points out against the supporters of the thesis of the universal evolutionary path of societies, primitive community, slavery, feudalism, capitalism, socialism, that the hypothesis of a plurality of the forms of passage to the class society slip more and more into obscurity, as in Engels' analysis relative to the Germanic social formations was forgotten. It will conclude there and pick back up. Civilization or barbarism. I'm your world, man. Hi, it's